皆様、お待たせいたしました。ただいまより
Thank you all very much for waiting. We would like to begin the Asia Philanthropy Congress 2022 hosted by Nippon Foundation. My name is Kumiko Orihara. I would be the moderator for this session. Nice to meet you all. Now, first of all, I would like to call upon the chairman of Nippon Foundation, Mr. Yohei Sasakawa, to give us the opening remarks. Mr. Sasakawa, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I would like to first and foremost appreciate all the participants for showing such a strong interest towards philanthropic activities. Now, looking at the world, we see such a strong growth in economy in Asia. And at the same time, from the population perspective, Asia is a growing population of countries. In Asia, there are various corporations spinning off the foundation organizations, and thus the philanthropy activities are becoming active than ever. We have not necessarily been updated with all those activities that are going on, but this is the Congress that all of those stakeholders have gotten together, and we have discussed thoroughly of each and every organization's activities, trying to find some similarities so that we can maybe work together going forward. And for that particular purpose, we have been able to host the first Asia Philanthropy Congress today. In the morning session was a closed session. We talked about the employment of people with disabilities and also capacity building. And we have extended our talk to the climate change and climate actions as well. Each and every organizations, the groups, had shared with us and introduced to us of the activities that they're doing, and we did a very active discussion. Now, looking at the society, a lot of the issues that are faced with are becoming more and more diverse, and there are various challenges in the society. We have come to a point where there are limitations as to one organization or one company can do. And I think this was one of the conclusions that we have come up with in that closed session. So I think that we would need to share the information and the activities amongst us, and we need to come to a point we can think of how we can collaborate to one another to do various projects. So as a first Asia Philanthropy Congress, this was such a landmarking conference for us. Later on, we will have the panel discussions today, so I would like you to stay updated with what the members would talk about. Today, we were able to have a distinguished guest today, who's Mr. Polman, who had acted as the CEO of Unilever for more than 10 years. And he is taking the leadership, becoming the leadership role of Valuable 500, gathering 500 CEOs from different companies. He has a very strong will trying to employ persons with disabilities, because disability people amount to 1.2 billion around the world. This 1.2 billion people can be deemed as a huge market. So this is, in a way, one of the major area that we're trying to address. And at the same time, one of the direction that people have been focusing on, which was to focus on the shareholders' value. I think that we have started to question ourselves as to whether that's viable, because this shareholder value, setting that as the first and foremost priority, may have actually brought the disparity amongst the society. So today, we are talking about the future of social innovation and philanthropy. And we also had an active discussion in that field as well. We did not have enough time to finish all our discussions. However, being said that, I think that people had talked about their views, and those are being kept as a record. So we would like to take today's conference as a trigger so that not just a philanthropist like ourselves and many of the organizations gathered here in this room, but we want to engage the corporate sector as well. And in order to invite those corporate sectors, what are the hurdles we have? And those should also be addressed at the same time. And Mr. Knight Batra had actually going to take the facilitator role today, and is going to scrutinize all those different perspectives during this session. So thank you, Ms. Batra, for taking this role as an MC from the Asian Venture Philanthropy Network. And we would like to also take the questions from the floor as well. Now, society is becoming more and more diverse, and I think the corporate sector has a different role to play in that landscape. And as an individuals who have to live in the society as a member of the society, so they need to also question ourselves as to whether the status quo be suffice. And I think that we need to think of what philanthropical organization can do versus what the corporate sector can do. And I think that this is going to give the opportunity for you to just stop for a second and give thought as to what can be done going forward. We have such a great guests here with us. And I would like to pass on the microphone to those wonderful members of this Congress. And with that, I would like to announce the opening of this Asia Philanthropy Congress. Thank you very much. Mr. Sasakawa, thank you very much for those remarks.
それではこれよりパネルディスカッション1、フィランソロピーとソーシャルイノベーション。
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to enter into panel discussion 1, where discussions will prevail over the future of philanthropy and social innovation. We would like to invite the facilitators as well as the speakers who will join us on stage. Serving as a facilitator from Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, CEO, we have with us Ms. Naina Zillur Batra. And from BRAC, the chairperson, Dr. Hossain Zillur Rahman, business leader and activist and speaker of Net Positive, chair of the Valuable 500, former CEO Unilever, Mr. Polman, and chairman of Godrej and Boyce Manufacturing Company Limited, Mr. Jamshid Godrej, and the chairman of Nippon Foundation, Mr. Yohei Sasakawa, joins us. Now I would like to turn over to the CEO of Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, Ms. Naina Zillur Batra.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share the stage with 4 luminaries. I think we are all really lucky to be on this auditorium today, to be able to be in a position where we can ask my 4 panelists questions that you have always wanted to ask them, but never really had the chance. I want to thank the Nippon Foundation for organizing the first Asia Philanthropy Congress, which has brought together, such a good group of leaders from across the Asian region working on philanthropy, working on social investment. As the MC announced, my name is Naina Zillur Batra, and I lead an organization called AVPN, which is also up there. We are delighted to partner with Nippon Foundation for this Congress. And for those of you who do not know us, we are a network. We are the largest social investment network in Asia, and our mission is to drive capital towards impact. Now, keeping that in mind, I'm really excited because my 4 panelists all look at driving different types of capital towards impact and have impact very much embedded in their own minds and have had a long history of working with impact organizations and driving impact in what they do. You have all of their bios, and so I'm not going to take the time to read out the many achievements and the many things that they have done before they came here. You can look at them, and you can see that in the bio. So we will not waste time doing that. One of my panelists has a hard stop at 3:30, and I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions from the audience. And I know you'll all have a lot of questions to ask. So I'm going to try to keep this as tight as possible. I request my fellow panelists that let's keep our answers short so that we can get to more questions. And also, as I have been told by the translator, if we can be a little slow, this is the hardest for me. I tend to speak very fast, but if we can try to speak slowly so that they can get the translation, but more importantly, the translation is then going into sign language. So we want to keep that in mind. So let's be a little measured in how we respond. Now, having said all that, let's get to business. I'm going to start first with Mr. Godrej. I purposely, by the way, chose to sit in the middle because there are 4 gentlemen here and I'm the only woman. The next time, Sasakawa-san, we do this Congress, we're going to have 4 women and 1 man, just to make up for today, you and 4 women. So that is what we are going to do. But I want to start with Mr. Godrej. For those of you who are not aware, the Godrej Group is a large conglomerate in India, the country that I originally come from. And I grew up watching the group with a lot of pride and seeing that you reflected a lot of values that today we espouse as symbols, signals that corporates are doing a good job. The question I wanted to ask, actually starting with, is that the Godrej Group has had purpose embodied in its ethos, in its credo, much before purpose or profit with purpose became sexy, became something that we all talked about. If you can tell us a little bit about the Godrej family and the corporate, and where did this purpose come from?
Thank you, Naina. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here today. Naina, I'm 3rd generation in the family. When my grandfather started the business, it was in a very, very tiny factory in a very crowded locality. And he was very upset with what he saw at the time. And so when he had an opportunity to buy a sort of an estate outside Bombay, his first priority was that we have to make sure that all the children of our employees get schooling, that they all get housing, that they all have health care, etc. And he was quite a bit ahead of his time. And in fact, he, as part of the overall sort of corporate approach that we had, the first thing that my grandfather did was he supported the Dalit movement in India. And he gave a big donation to Tilak at that time, who was really supporting, with Gandhi at that time. So that is the sort of background of the family. I think what we have tried to do over the years is be as socially conscious as one possibly can be for a corporate. But it is unusual in the private sector to have schooling and housing, etc., for employees. But it was, in a way, the ethos of the time. And I think that is what really drove the organization.
Just a follow-up on that. I think it's interesting, right? Because we talk now a lot, and we had the chance to spend some time with Paul in the morning session, which was closed. And Paul talked about, why corporates are really looking at responsibility. And, he of course said that there was no reason why they should not, and why businesses should not be socially conscious and socially responsible. But Jamshed, I wanted to ask you one more question, actually. On that, do you think it had a positive effect on your brand because you had this ethos and you were very, very socially responsible?
Well, this is a complex question. I don't think that you can say yes or no to that. Yes, I think that for a lot of our customers in India, it was an important aspect. Whether it was as important an aspect for our employees is a matter of debate. Because, in India at the time, there was a very strong trade union movement, and we suffered as much as anybody else did at the time. So to think that just because you have done all this for employees, it makes a huge difference in their approach and ethos when there are outside influences, politicians, etc., to motivate people to go on strike, etc. So I think, this is a complex question, but it's worth debating this question because it is an important one.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Rahman, and I have a lot of admiration, and I've just been gifted a book on the life of Sir Abed. BRAC is a household name. I think for anybody working not just in the development sector, but anyone looking at business models for good, BRAC is a gold standard. I would love to actually ask you this, if you can just share a little bit in terms of how the BRAC movement really started, and if you can link that, and I know again it's a little bit of a complex question, so I apologize, but if you can link the growth of BRAC to the growth of civil society and how important that is when we really look at development, that would be really interesting, I think, for the audience.
Thank you. And my thanks also to the Nippon Foundation and Sasakawa-san for bringing us here and this very important conversation. BRAC actually started as an intention. It started as an intention through two foundational experiences. First was in 1970. There was a devastating cyclone and flood which killed over 3.3 million people in the coastal island of Bangladesh. That galvanized Sir Abed to, he was moved to leave his corporate life behind and get into humanitarian work. And the year after, the independence of Bangladesh occurred through a massive amount of refugee displacement, etc. So naturally, these two things, one a natural disaster, another of a political nature disaster, brought to the fore the idea of we have to do something for these people. So it essentially started as relief work in 1972 in a small part of northeastern Bangladesh, Sylhet. But then the intention quickly became institutionalized. And there was no business model as such to start with, but it went along. And if you look at the graph in front of us, you'll see that every decade, BRAC has diversified, expanded its footprints. It's moved into many sectors, and this movement was an organic one, as the need. For example, in the first thing that we did was Bangladesh had this very large population. So the idea is why there is this large population. Every mother was bearing 6 children. So idea is why are they bearing so much children? Because most of the child die. So the idea is, can you do something about child mortality? That's where the oral rehydration therapy, which has become a lifesaver around the world now for antidiarrheal diseases. So that brought child mortality down. That freed the woman and the child to look for new opportunities in education, health, and economic empowerment. And then BRAC responded to the new demands of health, of education, of economic empowerment. In the 90s, we looked at the poor. We were addressing them, but then we found that poor has many layers. There is the extreme poor. You have to do something about them. We invented the graduation approach to deal with them, etc., etc. So BRAC, in its own personality, for this audience, we are actually a hybrid organization, because we are also part corporate. We are part development actor. We are part civil society. We are part a partner of the state. So we have actually grown organically in terms of agenda, but we have also grown organically in terms of our idea of partnership. It was partnership of the beneficiaries, partnership with peers, partnership with the state. So that's how, and BRAC also, from the very beginning, the reason business model word came in is that we also understood that we are not a conventional NGO. So sustainability was an issue from day one. So we have our own sort of investments. We plow back into our programs. We also take grants. So sustainability became an important issue. But I think the corporate philanthropy nexus that is of importance here is that we have gone into investment, but our choice of these, from the beginning, the social goal was paramount.
No, thank you. And you've said a lot of terms which I think are very important and are very interesting to this audience. You talk about corporate partnership, you talk about business model, you talk about development sector, you talk about the voice of the beneficiary and the fact that the social goal was paramount. The question I want to ask you is that in today's day and age, when we talk about partnership, Dr. Rahman, we find partnership to be very difficult to do. And especially when you talk about partnership between corporate and non-profit, partnership between government and civil society, these are not things which in today's environment are easy. How has BRAC navigated this? And how have you ensured that the voice of the most marginalized is actually on the table?
Trust is a very important word here. How do you build partnerships? Upward, downward, horizontal. Trust is critical. You have to have the trust of the beneficiaries. And in COVID-19, when COVID-19 struck, the first blow was on the microfinance because they were not able to repay. And BRAC, what did it do? It took a conscious decision. We will forget being a financial organization now. We will focus on our partners. They have to be safe first. So that paid off because they quickly rebounded and the thing became sustainable. So partnership, trust, absolutely, but we also demonstrated great expertise in implementation because BRAC is often seen as an important laboratory of implementation science, actually. Particularly, I think, in the development world, one key challenge is the last mile challenge. You have good intention, but delivering to that last mile, we have really focused on that part, the last mile challenges. And that could not be done just in terms of an expert angle. It could be done with consultation, listening to the ground. Navigating also required us, because when we became big, BRAC is big. We are the recorded the largest NGO in the world. We also, obviously, in our navigational radar, state also figured, because state, we have in almost all over Bangladesh, we have our presence. So navigating that relationship with the state was also an important challenge. And we did that in terms of, again, trust, but it's a tricky area where we had to hold our ground also. You asked me at the very beginning, civil society. So we see ourselves also in that space. And we need to keep alive those ideas, the ideals. Dignity for women, violence against women, for example, is a key concern. In our institutional culture, this is very embedded. Safeguarding is given extremely high priority. We want to make sure that the gender balance in our staff is sustainably equitable. So that navigation has really allowed us to go through all these difficult challenges over the years.
It sounds as if you have to walk a tightrope many times, and you've obviously done that really well. I want to move to you, Sasakawa-san, and actually build on what Dr. Rahman has talked about in terms of partnership, in terms of reaching the last mile. Under your leadership, the Nippon Foundation has supported causes as diverse as leprosy. And I think it's amazing the work that you have done in tackling leprosy, in tackling the stigma associated with leprosy around the world, and especially in India. You've also worked on peace and conflict resolution. And that is a very unusual sort of area for philanthropists to go into. They tend to normally shy away from it. So I want to start by asking you, why peace and conflict? Why have you decided you want to support that?
あなた野球わかるかどうか。
I don't know if you play baseball, but it's a fast strike that you, Naida-san, cast on me. I thought it would be an easier question. It's a hard question. You talked about a big issue about resolving conflict, which is a huge issue. And Asia today, in the evolution and development of Asia, in the conflict area, there are many, of course, conflict area. And in terms of supporting humanitarian support was the basic of Nippon Foundation. Of course, leprosy, Hansen disease is one of course, humanitarian. And of course, supporting the people with disabilities also part of that. So humanitarian approach in the conflicted areas, those people. As of now, the hot theme is Myanmar, I would say, people suffering in Myanmar. Many people. It's among imagination of how they live these difficult times. And you're looking at it in the media, such as newspapers and media. Can you resonate with these people, the ordeals that they have to go through? Or do you want to step in to help them? And it's just a small minor differences. Be a viewer or want to step in. And Nippon Foundation, basically, in part of the humanitarian approach, we decided to extend our, of course, help in trying to resolve the conflict that we see today in the world.
Follow that up. I mean, you said something which is very true. When you look at the people of Myanmar, and you look at the enormous suffering that they're going through, and you think about it, that it is no fault of theirs. It is no fault of theirs that there are certain political, military happenings in that country, but it is the people who suffer. And if you think about it, Sasakawa-san, philanthropy is the capital that is supposed to be the most risk-taking. It's supposed to be the most innovative. From your many years of experience, why is it that philanthropists are happy to take risk in their business, but they are not happy to take risks when it comes to supporting humanitarian challenges like you have done?
Well, I think I would say that each of the stance, I would say, the approach is all different. It's not to say that working in the office is getting the report and making the final decision is not a bad thing. But how I live my life is that there are some problem and also solution to the problem on the field. So I have a philosophy to take action, philosophy based upon the philosophy. So 122 countries around the world, car accident, airplane accident, what have you. That's the truth. That's the fact. So you have to be determined to do your mission and responsibility. And that's my belief. So it's not that my way of doing things is not universal. It does not apply to the universal approach. In terms of the issue with Myanmar, as you say, I completely agree with you, Naina-san. But it did not really begin recently. It's been this issue over 7 years. The conflict was there. So 20 sort of militant in the city, in the country, and the fighting with the state government. It has always been there. So the leprosy disease, interim elimination of Hossain disease, I went in from that angle, but already 160 times I have gone into the mountainous area of Myanmar, and the people who are vulnerable to sit on their side and listen to what they have to say. Then we will be able to nurture mutual trustworthy relationship. And that's really a hard work, a groundwork. It takes time. But if you become a politician, you have your own sort of a stance that you have been telling, or this was your statement or comment. And that what you had said as a politician, it's it's a destiny of being a politician, I would say. But we are not politicians. Until we have the actual deliverable, we would not make sense. There is a sentiment of hate between each other. So if you do need to embrace them and understand them, in my case, I'm not standing as a representative of Japan's state government in order to, when I go to Myanmar. But I'm sorry to say, the people with the media, the interview, I don't receive the interview. Because if there is a deliverables and result, it has to be announced by the state government. So it would apply to any politician. They have a big title on their shoulders. And then it's regardless of whether your counterparty would agree or not, or have trustworthy or not, they would say through the politician, that is, through the media, this is my belief, this is my statement. And that does not lead to solving the issue.
を損なってしまうんじゃないかと。そのためには相当時間がかかる仕事ではありますね。
Even though this is a time-consuming affair, it must be done.
Absolutely, it must be done. And please, because I'm going to come back and ask you a follow-up question, Sasakawa-san. But a lot of what Sasakawa-san said, Paul, I think applies to you. He talked about each person following their conscience. He talked about the fact that, if you're a politician, you have certain demands and you cannot be a certain way. I want to start by asking you about your story. As the CEO of Unilever, you really sort of, firmly established Unilever as the corporate leader for sustainability, for taking, a trailblazing path. But after stepping down as CEO of Unilever, you've gone much farther. Tell us a little bit about that. What motivates you? Why? I mean, many CEOs, when they move away from a public position, don't do the kinds of things that you're doing.
Yeah, I personally don't think we should draw a distinction between what politicians can do or what business people can do or what we as representatives of civil society can do. We all have to follow our conscience. We all have opportunities to influence and change systems that don't work. But ultimately, we all have to live by certain values, which I think are increasingly universal: dignity and respect for everybody, inclusion, equity. And we all have to have the courage to put ourselves to the service of people that are not able to help themselves right now. And unfortunately, that group is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So what drives me is very simple. I've been very fortunate to be born in the Netherlands. I was born in 1956 after the World War, and the older I get, the more I realize how close that is after the World War. My parents were deprived of their education. The only thing that counted for my father, who worked in a factory, was that his 6 children would go to school, that the communities would be working together, that Europe had peace. These people were working for a bigger picture, for a common good, They were not just selfishly working for themselves. So I think I've been very lucky to grow up in the Netherlands, where the government paid for my education. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here. Where we had food at home, otherwise I would have been stunted. We had a toilet at home, so I didn't have issues of sanitation that the 1.5 billion people have that still do open defecation. So I won the lottery ticket of life, and I've been very fortunate in my life to get to positions that I can actually enlarge my circle of influence. And it's, in that case, it's your duty, I think, or your obligation to do that, especially now when so many are failing. And as a result, so many people are suffering. I don't want to be responsible for the 9 million people that die of air pollution every year. I don't want to be responsible for the 160 million children that are stunted. I don't want to be responsible for the 5 million children that die before the age of 5. So if I can do something about that, then I have to. That is, I think, quite normal. So what you find is that when you are a CEO by coincidence, which was never my choice, but for some reason it happened, then you have board authority or you have formal authority. But if you step aside, actually, life becomes better, because the only thing you can attach yourself to, I don't have the billions of dollars of Unilever or the millions of people in the Unilever network. I have myself, and that's really when you have to move to moral authority. And what I found when I was a CEO, despite all the things we were trying to do, there are some things inherent in the job of a CEO that you just can't do. You can't solve alone the issues of deforestation or climate change or plastics in the ocean. So right now I entirely focus on the business sector, rallying them together at critical mass across value chains by industry sector to drive the more transformative changes, leveraging the G20, I just came from Bali, or the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, where I was the week before, or working in partnerships with the philanthropic society or other parts of society to drive these broader changes. And that's a good space to be in. Nothing better than putting yourself to the service of others and knowing that as you do that, you're also better off yourself.
Absolutely. And, you know, you said two things this morning in the closed session, which really resonated with me. One you said was that, you know, you talked about a billionaire, and you talked about how, you know, he's making more money than he's giving away, and that's not right. And you also talked about right now as all of us as individuals, and I think that is something, you know, as the audience here, I think it should resonate really strongly. All of us have the moral duty. All of us, in some senses, have won that genetic lottery. And we all need to be able to see what we can do to leave the world in a slightly better place than what we found. But following up, Paul, on one more question. You come from a corporate background. And we talk more and more about, you know, unless and until we bring markets, we bring corporates into this discussion, we are not going to be able to solve the big thorny problems like climate change. You've also written a book which is on my bedside, Net Positive. And I wanted to understand, how difficult has it been to take corporates along on this journey? And how would you advise us in our different markets in Asia to talk to corporate partners?
Well, it's not easy, otherwise we would not have the problems. This is for the first time in the history that actually we are slipping on the Sustainable Development Goals, where poverty is going up, where income inequality is going up, where the planetary boundaries are being stretched to such a level that millions and millions more people are suffering. We're putting ourselves at risk of extinction. This is a very crucial moment for humanity. And frankly, it has crept up a little bit faster than we had thought. So that's probably what you see right now. But what we also see is that the consequences of not acting are actually significantly bigger than what we thought. So there is a sense of urgency. And what we now see in the private sector, I think, is a fundamental change of, I would call it perhaps before COVID and after COVID. When the financial crisis was there 10, 15 years ago, we really missed an opportunity. We spent billions of dollars to rescue the financial industry. but we didn't do anything to attack the burning issues of climate change or inequality. And people felt that banks were too big to fail, but people were too small to matter. And as a result, you got populism, xenophobia, nationalism in many parts of the world, democracies on the decline, and things like Brexit or the previous president in the United States are a direct result of that. Let's not mince words around that. With COVID, actually, a different thing happened. I think people started to realize how interrelated we are, that we're first and foremost citizens of planet Earth, that if we work together very fast, like with the vaccine, we can actually attack things, that COVID is a direct result of destruction of biodiversity, that it has an injustice element of it. The poorer people, the women, the children were disproportionately affected by COVID. We also found out in COVID that it's a direct result of destruction of these planetary boundaries, where we're living well beyond the capacity now of Mother Earth to compensate for our failings. So people have started to realize that you can't have this limited growth on this finite planet, and anything you can do forever, in my opinion, is by definition unsustainable. So what is the positive thing? Is that business is starting to realize that. They're starting to realize that you can't create jobs on a dead planet, that if some of these societies don't function like Myanmar or others, that business doesn't function either. When societies fail, business fails. So increasingly they're incurring the cost of COVID, the cost of climate change, the cost of fragile regimes, the cost of multilateral institutions not working. And we are at a very sweet spot, partly because technology has moved very fast, always underestimate the speed of technology, and partly because we are starting to realize that the cost of not acting is actually becoming higher than the cost of acting. COVID in Europe and the US alone has cost us $17 trillion to save lives and livelihoods. We've lost $25 trillion this decade. That's infinitely more than what we need to spend to implement the Sustainable Development Goals or to protect biodiversity. So the good part of business, I think the smarter part of business, is starting to understand that and increasingly positioning their businesses for this more inclusive, more sustainable, more equitable future. And interesting, what we see is that companies that proactively move, reducing their carbon emissions, building human rights standards in their value chain, giving people living wages, provide social safety networks, that these businesses are actually increasingly higher valued by the financial market as well. ESG funds that advocate investing that have outperformed non-ESG funds. So it's starting to move. The issue that we don't need to spend time anymore on is why should we do this, frankly? We should really focus on the companies that are moving and helping them move faster so that we create these tipping points. In electricity and solar, in electricity on mobility, electric vehicles, we're getting close to these tipping points. We just need to push a little bit harder in other areas. And that's where we all need to work together. Because what we see in Sharm el-Sheikh or at the G20 or many of the other moments that governments can rise to the challenge, it just doesn't happen anymore. So if we can align together as parts of civil society, in which I also count business, I always said Unilever, by the way, I don't want to compete with BRAC, but I always said Unilever was the biggest NGO. But if we would go together and show that it can be done, we help de-risk the political process and hopefully move faster before it's too late for other hundreds of millions of people who suffer, frankly, from our incompetence.
Absolutely, and yes, like you said, we don't have a choice. The cost of not doing something is far greater than actually the cost of doing something. And you talked about it's a great time to bring you in, Jamshed, because your group has a good and green strategy. You yourself are on the boards of a number of non-profit institutions that focus on climate action. Paul just talked about the intersectionality of how climate is really there across several issue areas that we need to solve. How are you linking the good and green strategy with how the Godrej Group performs, and how do you see climate as being the key area that sort of links all of this together?
Yeah, thanks, Naina. The late Professor C.K. Prahlad always used to say that if companies cannot be both sustainable and innovative, they will disappear. And he had many examples of that. And I think that exactly what Mr. Polman was saying is very, very true. I think that those who have worked in the confluence of these two areas really have been successful. I think our good and green strategy essentially talks of two things. One is that we want to make everything that we do green, which means manufacturing processes, products, etc. They should have a very, very high green component. We should, for instance, anything we build should be a green building. The energy we use should be renewable. Those are the sort of fundamental points that are overarching for the business. But at the same time, when you say what is good about it, products can be of all types. What is a good product? I mean, what may be good to you may not be good to someone else. And what is relevant for a European may not be relevant for someone in India or in Bangladesh. So I think it's very important to make sure that the product is a good product. For instance, we make refrigerators. Now we have to make refrigerators which are energy efficient. So can we be the most energy efficient refrigerator manufacturer, not just in India, but elsewhere also? So those are the sort of things that determine a good product. Also, for instance, refrigeration uses refrigerant gases. Many of these refrigerant gases actually are more harmful to the atmosphere than CO2 is. Many times, you've heard of the ozone hole and all of that of the past. But for instance, we developed a sustainable refrigerant which does not use any freon type of chlorofluorocarbon. And the world was slow in adopting to that. But now more and more we find that companies are doing that. So I think that you need leaders. I mean, Mr. Polman has shown that leading and having people follow you is a great compliment, And I think that is really what we are also trying to do. We want to be as green and as good in our products as we possibly can. And employees actually see this as a great motivating factor. So you have to look at this from the point of view that do your employees enjoy working for you? Would they rather work for someone else? When it comes down to the bottom line, is money the motivator or is purpose the motivator? Is there something more to people's lives than just their existence? Yes, of course you have to have a minimum wage. There's no doubt about that. But beyond that, what is the motivator? So I think good and green came out of that. And we tried to follow that. And my own personal journey, for the last more than 30 years, with the Industry Association in India, the Confederation of Indian Industry, we have tried to be an internal catalyst within industry for change. And for instance, we set up what is known as a Green Business Center in Hyderabad. This was set up more than 30 years ago. It started initially with energy efficiency for industry, but then it moved on to green buildings. And today we have, as a result of this initiative, we have the second largest footprint of rated green buildings in the world in India. And so it's a question of saying, okay, this is what's required. What do we need to do it? How do we need regulation around it? But more than that, what is the motivator? Can you show the industry that building a green building is better than building a non-green building? And in fact, today, after many years of working in this area, you could say that it would be a stupid developer who builds something that is not a green building, because there's so many benefits to it. So I think those are the sort of things that are really important. For businesses, I think you have to show that being green is actually good and profitable. And it's good for shareholders, it's good for stakeholders, etc. And I think when you show that and demonstrate it, it makes a huge difference.
No, absolutely. And I want to bring Dr. Rahman into the conversation. Dr. Rahman, you talked about BRAC being the largest NGO. You also talked about BRAC having a business model and, having come from corporate roots because Saabet came from a corporate background. How much does things like going green, the intersectionality of climate with gender, the intersectionality of climate, given that Bangladesh has some of the most biggest climate disasters, how much is this playing a role as you are thinking of BRAC over the next 10 years?
I'd be happy to cede my role to Paul, being the largest NGO in the world. But as I said, every decade we are having to reinvent ourselves. This decade too, we are having to do that. And some of the issues that you mentioned, that's exactly where we are focused. Now, one area where we are seeing is the need to, development has been working in silos. The health projects, economic projects, education projects. We're trying to marry them at the hip in the sense that the microfinance clientele, their health needs, their education needs. So getting those programs integrated at that level, that's one way we're addressing intersectionality. Our field offices are now becoming architecturally competent to address the issues that we mentioned. In the Rohingya camps, we just won a Aga Khan Architectural Award for building community spaces for the refugees, which is a new architectural sort of departure in the way these non-permanent structures are built. So net zero, we are even in our own office, we are trying to address that in terms of our own office. We are trying to support startups, women-led, one startup from Khulna working on public toilets, sustainable public toilets, several others. BRAC is trying to support them. So that's one direction that we are trying to go. The other is that we also feel that there is a space in which BRAC, as you know, established a university also, BRAC University, because we felt that, these poor families, when their children graduate, where will they find the next stage of their education? So the BRAC University was established and is one of the leading universities of Bangladesh now, not only catering to that group, but for the society as a large. But one area that we feel perhaps we haven't discussed in this panel is the need to also have a footprint in the policy and discourse space. That's also very important, because if you don't address those issues, they'll come to haunt you by putting up boundaries which are not very helpful. So that's somewhere we are particularly now pushing. One specific initiative we are considering is, I've come to this Asia Philanthropy Congress. One of the initiatives we are planning for next year, that's also in partnership with a variety of actors, maybe hopefully some from here also, is a Global South Knowledge Conference as a potential new discourse initiative where we can discuss these issues more specifically and where the convening is done by us in a way so that we can choose which topics really matter most to the people at large. So that's, I think, something we are going to move into. Final point I would make is that the human part of what we are trying to do is at the end of the day, you can have programs, you can have projects, but these have to be delivered by humans. So our workforce, our skill set, that is very critical. And when BRAC as an entity is very large, as you know, about 1 lakh plus employees, retaining that quality of human quality in the workforce is a very important challenge. And we are really addressing that. And I feel the message I would like to add to the message from the morning here, sharing of wealth, yes, but sharing of engaged time and sharing of sort of trust for action. That is also, it's not enough just to share the wealth. You have to also share your engaged time. And you have to also share your drive and passion for action. Those are important too.
Oftentimes harder to do than sharing your wealth. It's interesting to hear about the BRAC way. And from the BRAC way, I'm going to move to Sasakawa-san. Before we open it up to the audience for questions, I have heard about the BRAC way and how BRAC has really transformed Bangladesh, if you really want to think about it. But there is something called the Nippon Foundation way. And I want to hear a little bit from you, where when you talk about the Nippon Foundation way, what exactly do you mean? I would really like to hear from you.
Yes, before that, one thing. In the closed session, it has not been talked about. Neither there are themes that has not been touched upon. Can I just allude to that? That is, many of the people, the civil society, regarding Nippon Foundation, they donate a lot of their asset. We are activists. In taking action, we need funding and money. So how we are going to successfully achieve the funding objective is our foundation needs to be trusted by the people of the country. Otherwise, they will not endow their money to us. So basically, transparency and also accountability is the must for our foundation.
私若く見えますけど若いんです。
I may look young, and by the way, I am. I'm at the office by 6:40 a.m., and at some moments I write 600 letters of thanks to donators who have delivered 10,000 yen or more of donations. And I write 600 of these letters every morning. And with these repeated activities, not only those who are at the front lines taking on action, there are many behind us who are supporting us. In the United States, we have orphan diseases and also child poverty, as well as a disaster. By theme, we collect donations, but we find that for many in the nation, we receive donations. It is important to go over these so that we understand that there is a very foundation at the public level through which we have our roots firmly planted, and we have the branches that reach out, and that is how we are able to deploy activities around the world. So people are resources. We find that many watch images on the screen, the TV screen, but are not able to take action on their own. How about if we resign from going to the restaurant on the weekends and instead donate the same amount of money? We are making an effort, but we have not really seen the collection of donations as a theme. But this is the very basics, the very foundations of our activities, and therefore I wanted to make that comment. And the Japan Foundation way is such that we are always trying to identify social issues within a society that is so diverse. We cannot leave everything in the hands of the central government or the local municipal government, because there is not the capability to do so, to handle all these issues. And therefore, we host these various conferences so that we will be able to find a way to support central government and local municipalities so that we can step in where they have not been able to bring their attention to. And that is why what has brought us to host these conferences. And we have conducted our research and surveys. And to identify social issues and mobilize experts onto the table of Japan Foundations. We also invite members of the media as well as from the academia, and we are also there. And what we do is put together a set of recommendations. We have the child agency, but the recommendation was founded by the Nippon Foundation. And there is also the basic law of the sea that we have also designed. So these are efforts that we have made. We can't just be a think tank. We must think and at the same time think and do. And the government and also members of the local municipality are also engaged in our conferences. And that will give them an understanding, an awareness, a realization of what they need to do, as members of the central government and local municipal government. So while it is our responsibility at the same time, where issues remain unnoticed by central government and the local municipalities, we are there to extract these issues and put them together, give it shape, and deliver to central government and local municipal governments so that they will be there to produce regulations and laws. And that is a Japan Foundation way, to put it simply.
Thank you. I am now, you have heard from all of these amazing panelists about moral courage, about individual responsibility, about collaboration, about listening, about not just listening and talking, but doing, and about the urgency that is in front of us all. So I'm going to open it up to questions. I believe that we have mics. So this is your chance. You can ask any of my panelists a burning question that you've been waiting to ask. Okay, we have a young person right there. Do we have a mic that we could use so that he can ask a question? Thank you. Right down the middle. The gentleman in the check shirt. Yes.
From Kumamoto Connection Project, my name is Gino. Thank you very much for the presentation. There's one thing that came to mind. As for the penetration of BRAC way, this is my question. Generally speaking, at a private company, there's a code of conduct and there are also rules and regulations, and which must be adhered to. And especially the HR consulting companies are mobilized to grade this to mid to long term. And how about BRAC? And in order to localize a BRAC way in the Global South, are there things that you have sorted out as to what not to do and what needs to be done? I would like to ask you to share with us your thoughts on what you're currently doing to ensure that happens.
Well, I think we have taken these issues of human resource, the quality due diligence, and all the way from recruitment to the conduct during their stay and onboarding, not just take a punitive approach, but a supportive approach. So we give a lot of attention, and we have multiple programs. Some people, young people are recruited at a very early stage. They are seen as like core staff who are going to become future leaders of the organizations. So they are given a more intensive training. So this is very important for us, the human skills of our workforce and the potential for it, that we are really very keen to address it. And in particular, also the values part of it, because we do both, oversight, but also incentives, so that we have the best motivated workforce working for the organizations. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. But in terms of support, the encouragement, so at the entry point, do you select people who would embrace your idea? Otherwise, it's like pouring water on a ship. And of course, the sink will sink if there's a hole. So in terms of before hiring these people, alignment, or that is going to be a very important part before having them on board. That's my impression. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think there is a very appropriate process, multiple layers of interviewing, and even during an onboarding process, whether people do come just for the sake of it or motivated people. So your question is very, I think, on target, but we have taken multiple steps to make sure that motivated, engaged people are joining the organization.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. We should go to the next one. Yes, we have a couple of hands on that side. The lady with the yellow first, and then the gentleman. Can we get the mic to the young lady in the yellow?
I would like to thank
discussion. I was very inspired by how, as a top leader, how to establish trust with stakeholders and partners. So, チームとし、そうですね。他の事業
for employees and also as an organization, the posture must be uniform. And Mr. Sasakawa, you have mentioned that you write letters every day for the sake of transparency and accountability. And you have placed, what are the activities that you are placing value on? Excuse me. What's important, of course, is, stamina. I wake up at 5 in the morning, and 40 minutes I stretch. And then by 6:40 a.m., I'm at the office. Before you were born, in Japanese language, the parent sets the precedent for the child, so it is said. Rather than giving 100 instructions, the person at the top, as a leader, his or her single action will set a model, and that is what I firmly believe in.
Sasakawa-san, 6:30 in the office. That's difficult. The other person at the back had a question. Yes.
Hi, my name is Kaveh Mitchell, and I started a sustainability company with one of my friends. And we basically did everything from scratch ourselves, self-funded, and we're doing everything that we can with our own power after working for big corporations. I think everybody on the stage is really inspiring, but I wanted to ask a more basic question. Do you think a small startup, a small organization like us, could potentially move in the right direction, or is it better if we join somebody like BRAC or Nippon Foundation and as like an individual member?
Okay, why don't you answer that question, Ramjit?
Thank you. You know, I firmly believe that every entrepreneur comes with their own ideas, and it's always better to take a risk with your own ideas than to be part of a much larger organization. So I would certainly encourage you to continue what you're doing. I think the really important part in any organization, you know, especially in businesses, we know that you can't extend yourself financially beyond what you really are able to. So the point is that you've got to be able to convince adequate number of people who support your ideas. I think that is a very important part. And make sure that you have good ideas which are sustainable. Thanks.
Paul, anything to add to that?
No, it's just you don't need to be big to have an impact. You need to have the right ideas and implement them to have an influence. You know, people say, how can I make a difference? My company is so small. But 95% of the world economy is made up of SMEs. And whilst you might not have all the resources, there are a lot of things to tap into. The International Chambers of Commerce, the UN Global Compact, the World Business Council of Sustainable Development, they're all putting tools out there that you can use. Often you're in a value chain of companies, and some of these companies are responsible and making capabilities available. So borrow those. And in fact, where most of the innovation and the ideas come from today in society are SMEs. The revolution that you now see in food to change our food system, which is fundamentally broken, are all small new companies that develop meat alternatives or green or neighborhood or organic. You see the same in mobility. I mean, 10 years ago, Elon Musk didn't exist. It was a zero company. Now it has a market cap, it's changed a little bit over the last few months, but a market cap that is bigger than all the other companies combined. So size doesn't matter, actually. It's the ideas that count. I come from the Netherlands, so it's a small country. It's never bothered me. If you think that a small thing cannot make a big difference, try to go to bed at night with a mosquito in the room.
That is true. We have one more hand up on that side.
Good afternoon. I'm an NGO worker for about 30, 40 years. I came from the Philippines, but I've been living in Japan for 35 years. So at one point, our NGO in the Philippines was one of the recipients of Japan Foundation for our children's project, education in the Philippines. And because we weren't able to directly go to Japan Foundation, but we were endorsed by one of the members of Japan Foundation. Now, my question is one, sustainability, now that we've been 35 years in the Philippines, and at the same time, also I'm working for the migrants in Japan. And one of the most problematic issues that we always face is, of course, sustainability in our financial, administrations and whatnots, projects, etc. So, but what is most inspiring in our work is about education, starting from the preschool to the completion of elementary, high school, and universities. We have already have recipients of around 35,000 children in the Philippines. So, but we remain to be simple. We only have, like, if we have 20 pesos or 100 pesos, all the rest, almost like 80% goes to the project. And so it's always a struggle because of our sustainability of our administration. So the issue and this topic for today is about Asia Philanthropy Congress. I was wondering where is it going to? I have grown into this really NGO work to the ground level. So what I would like to share is really, and I want to have the inputs of our elders here and as well as Japan Foundation, how are we going to sustain, how are we going to connect you? Because even in the Philippines, we have to have the right connection in order to reach you. It's difficult because of the structure. Thank you so much.
I think we understand your question. So I'm going to start with Dr. Rahman asking you that question. I think what she's trying to say is that as a nonprofit, how do you build your sustainability if all the money is to go to projects? How does the organization build its sustainability?
I don't think there is one single answer to all
what would
types
be
of
your advice?
My advice here is that she mentioned two things. One is sustainability. The other is the access to
funders,
possible sources of finance.
Yes, I was going to give that one to Sasakawa-san.
Right. Yes, the first one, the sustainability, BRAC itself. If I look at BRAC's own example, and I see also in the Bangladesh context, smaller NGOs like the one she mentioned, they also are struggling now because of the changing aid landscape. But I think there is a larger question here where policy issue comes in, which is that social NGOs like hers, asking them to become like a cost recovery model is a difficult one, because some of these funds have to come from either philanthropists or from the state. They cannot all be, cost recovery model doesn't really work there. So there is that policy issue. I would shift her question to that policy discourse I'm talking about. That how do these non-state actors in the social sector, how do you,
how do you actually help build their capacity and actually support them to not just survive but thrive? Just Sasakawa-san, part of her question is something a lot of nonprofits struggle with. And you talked about trust, and you talked about donations coming to Nippon Foundation because there is trust in Nippon Foundation. I think the question is, sometimes nonprofits depend on access in order to be able to get grants. What is the way philanthropy should be in a way to reach organizations like hers which may not have access?
大変ね、いい質問。
That's a great question. And this is my response. It may appear cold-hearted. What I'm trying to say, the top leader at the NGOs, now what is most important in their hearts? The top leader is responsible for collecting funds. I said for 640, I'm writing up these thank you notes. Are you writing those thank you notes? In order for supporters to increase, in order to see that there are more donors, to ensure that happens is the work of the top leader at the NPOs and NGOs. Of course, we dispense many funds, and therefore there are many that produce accounting records. And with the accounting records, what we do is conduct a survey as to whether our contributions are being used appropriately. We have a very capable audit department. However, some beneficiaries say that they don't have the skills or the time to write up such a report. And the money that we contribute, has been entrusted to us by others, and therefore transparency and accountability is crucial. And that is why we have asked our beneficiaries to produce a report, an accounting report. However, as I mentioned, there are about 20 or 30 such beneficiaries that respond in the manner that I've just mentioned. The top leader at the NGOs are often evaluated by the collection of the small amounts of money that they're able to collect. Of course, their activities are also put to evaluation, but all NGOs are doing a good job. But that alone is not sufficient. It needs to invite money, and that is dependent on the top leader. Are there many more people who are donating? That will be the gauge of your self-evaluation, the yardstick to be applied.
Thank you. I know we had one last question, but we are actually down to 1 minute, so I do apologize. I'm sure one of our panelists needs to leave, and I think has a flight to catch, so we're going to stop here. But I think I want to thank all of my panelists for sharing their life experiences. I think you have been very lucky to be in this room today to hear from them. Can we have a round of applause for the panelists? Thank you.
ご登壇いただきました皆様。
The members of the panelists, thank you so much.
それではここで約30分間の
So we would like to break for 30 minutes. The next session is the second panel discussion under the title of Forging Philanthropy Business Partnership Towards Diverse, Equitable, and Inclusive Society. We are starting at 4 p.m. So thank you very much, those of the viewers. We would like to resume at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for waiting. We would like to begin the panel discussion 2, Forging Philanthropy, Business Partnership Towards Diverse, Equitable, and Inclusive Society. So we'd like to pass the microphone to Dr. Caroline Cassay, the founder for the Valuable 500.
Good afternoon, everybody who's in the room. And good morning to those online from Ireland, from Europe. And good night to anybody maybe in New Zealand. So a really good welcome to everybody here today. Now, I am going to first introduce myself and everybody else before we start our presentations. But before we even do any of that, I just want to remind all of us that we have Mako and Keiko, who are our translators, interpreters. So we have to try to speak slowly. That's as much for myself as an Irish person. But also to say I've asked for the chairs to be brought closer and for us to be closer together, because we're here to have a conversation with each other. And we really want to have a conversation with you. This is about having conversations about how we can forge partnerships and relationships between philanthropy and the business world that create equitable, diverse, and inclusive societies. So there's no point us talking at you. We need to talk with you. And I have asked us to have a more informal conversation with each other. So to start the conversations, I've asked everybody to tell you their name and what it is that they're doing, and also to tell you what inclusion and equity and diversity means to them personally, rather than us reading the big, long bios. So for me, my name, as you can hear, is Caroline Casey, and I am from Ireland, and I am the founder and troublemaker and creator behind the Valuable 500. What inclusion means to me is to be part of creating a world where nobody hides who they are, where we are allowed to flourish and thrive and reach our potential uniquely and wonderfully as ourselves. And that is to remove the barriers that stop every one of us being who we truly are. So I'm going to start now from this way. Where am I going first? Mr. Fuji-san, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what inclusion means to you?
Hi.
So my full name is Hiroki Fujimoto, but please call me Fuji-san. Fuji-san, it means, it's pronounced the same way as Mount Fuji, the most famous mountain in Japan. So every time I'm called Fuji-san, my well-being is boosted incredibly. So I work for the Sumitomo Life Insurance Company. I'm in charge of the corporate venture capital as well as for the innovation fund. So we are in search for well-being here. And according to WHO's definition, it is physical and mentally and socially, you need to be fully sound. That is quite often the definition used by WHO. But it's hard to find someone in such state because you need to be healthy and you might have illness, but you would still want to be happy. Or even if you age, you still want to boost your happiness as well. So every single one of us, we need to find our own well-being, our own happiness. That is my definition of inclusion. Thank you very much for the opportunity today.
Fuji-san, I think I will call you the mountain from now on. So thank you, Mr. Mountain. Lilibet-san, could you introduce yourself and tell us what inclusion means to you?
Sure. Konnichiwa. Good afternoon. Magandang hapon. I'm Lilibet-san of Unilab Foundation, based in the Philippines. We're the corporate foundation of a leading pharmaceutical and healthcare company in the Philippines with a big presence in Southeast Asia. I'm a strong, passionate advocate of building inclusive communities where anyone who is discriminated due to gender or sexual orientation, race or ethnic origin, disability, and income is given an opportunity to participate, to realize his or her full potential, to participate in and productively contribute to his or her community.
Thank you, Lilibet-san. Satoshi-san, tell us a little bit about you and your passion for inclusion.
Good afternoon. My name is Satoshi Sato. So my last name is Sato. In Japanese term, it sounds the same as sugar, sweet. And that is exactly my personality. I'm such a sweet person. So I work for the BPI Japanese community
And I work for Japan Disability Forum, and I work with the Japanese government and take initiatives so the system the system is bettered. So the JDF is a network consolidated by 13 different associations of people with disabilities. So inclusion, it is one of my favorite terms because inclusion means those with or without disabilities. We learn at the same place, we work at the same place, and we play and have fun at the same place. That is the kind of society I would like to achieve. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You are Sugar Man. So we have Mountain Man, we have Sugar Man. Okay. Yosuke-san, introduce yourself and tell us why you are passionate about inclusion.
Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Ishikawa from the Nippon Foundation. Normally, I'm in charge of the overseas projects related to people with disabilities. So inclusion, what exactly does it mean to me? Well, and one of the first idea came to my mind is to be accepted. So in every venue, perhaps not everyone could be accepted per se, but let's just say in the venue that they cherish, and they feel that they belong to some sort of place. That is the kind of sentiment that I believe it is inclusion. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Yosuke-san. So I've been asked to explain a little bit about my work, in case you think I'm taking the mic and holding it, but I'm going to do it shorter than we had suggested because we want to have the conversation. But the reason I've been asked to speak about the Valuable 500 is because it is a great example of how philanthropy and business have come together to tackle a huge issue. But firstly, I want to explain why I really care about this. I myself am registered blind with a very rare condition called ocular albinism. I do not see beyond a foot. And I am not going to be able to see any of you, and I can't see my colleagues, so that's why I actually wanted everybody to be close. But what it means is I spent my life trying to hide my disability. I'm 51 years old, and I was born in 1971 in Ireland, and disability was the thing everybody forgot about in business. And it's wonderful to hear Lilibet-san say this, that the foundation as part of a company, and similarly you, Fuji-san, that disability is core to your business work. And that is very unusual. So the Valuable 500 was created because the scale of disability exclusion is phenomenal. It is an absolute crisis. Despite the fact that we have conventions and foundations and charities and government, but the problem still remains so vast. So we believe that business is probably one of the most important parts of the solution. Business is the most powerful force on the planet. If it includes, society includes. If it excludes, society excludes. So if we believe that, how do we go about engaging business like these two companies? Well, we believe you create the biggest collective force of business leaders and motivation on this planet. And we did that. We have now got 500, hence the name, the Valuable 500. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. 500 of the world's most influential businesses. But what makes us so different is we've got the signature and the intention of their CEOs. Actually, Fuji-san's company is a Valuable 500 company. 53 Valuable 500 companies come from Japan. Now, that's to say that's the beginning, and building something like that is incredible. So what do we do now? The next big thing is how do we act collectively and individually? And our job in the Valuable 500 is now to create opportunities for our 500 companies to work together, synchronized and simultaneous, to remove barriers for system change. No more inspiring, no more charity, no more Band-Aid, system change. And so they will be working together from 2023 to 2025 on leadership, people with disabilities getting into the top of the companies, reporting, and on representation. And we will return back here in Japan, and hopefully to Tokyo in 2025, to report on what we have done as 500 companies together. We shall break this system, and we shall do it positively. So that is my job. And the reason why I'm sitting here is we are an example of how philanthropy and business has forged a partnership in a win-win model. I began the Valuable 500 by remortgaging my house and singing and dancing to try to get funding. So any of you who are out there worried about funding, keep at it. It will come. And then what came was the Nippon Foundation, who saw the potential of what we were doing. And their money then was backed by business money. So we are an example of how we forge partnerships for philanthropy and for business. And when it does happen, it does work. So today I want you to think about how we can do that. And I'm going to first turn to Mr. Fuji-san, because actually as a Valuable 500 company, but really is what is so exciting is talking about how we're starting to move from philanthropy to sustained shared purpose. And so I'd love to hear you present, and then I would like to ask you a question.
Hi.
Thank you. That was a hard act to follow. So thank you very much for your introduction. Today, I'd like to speak about inclusion for the persons with disabilities. But before that, I'd like to explain to you the background with which we started working on it. This is about the Sumitomo Life. This is one of the leading life insurance companies. And we are deploying our activities not only in Japan, but also in Asian countries as well. Let me explain to you our purpose. Please refer to the left-hand side. I think it is written here. Sumitomo came up with the major principle 70 years ago. So this is a very purpose of our existence, which is to contribute to the advancement of social and public welfare. As to how we make contribution, please refer to the right-hand side. This is through the insurance business. So our approach to solving social issues is twofold: life insurance business, supporting the lives of the large number of customers and their families in the area of financial security. Even if people dies, it is all right, because in a way, to provide the support for them in terms of money. And then we have been doing this starting 1960s. So we use the vehicles to check the health of the people starting 1960 to visit many elementary schools. And we are providing the support for the doctors who have been doing the practicing medicine in the remote areas for decades. Philanthropy is important, but it is not that something we are doing is the covering everything. So we decided to move on to this area. This is about the creative value, creative shared value. And so we decided to combine this with the insurance. So that means that it would be conducive to the people's health enhancement. So people would join our program. That means that they are able to do things that is it would be able to boost their health. So that means that they are able to reduce the premiums for the insurance. So that means that they would become healthier, and then the amount of money that should be paid in the insurance would be lower. So the level of the mobility is getting lower. People getting at the hospital would be getting into the hospitalization status to be lowered. So that means that this is a win-win-win situation. Polman talked about this in the net positive issue. So shared value is not enough, and so we agree with that. So we'd like to
move on to the next step. So please refer to the next slide. This is the, what we call well-being as a service. This is the ecosystem that we are trying to create. Upper part is the vitality that I explained here earlier. So we provide support for people who are at this moment healthy, but this is not enough. This is disease management. Even if people have diseases, we are providing support in the form of services to make them happier. And also people get older, but still people would be able to seek for happiness and well-being. So these are the services that we are trying to provide. We are now heading into these steps. Against this backdrop, the one thing that we are focusing very much is shown on the right hand, the next page. This is the inclusion for the people. So the people should not be left behind. So everybody should be happy. So moving on to the next page. This is what we started in 2019. In Singapore, we established an NPO. This is for the people with disabilities trying to have an employment. This is the Employment Acceleration Program, and we are covering 6 institutes of higher learning, and also more than 50 companies are collaborating with us. So the people working in the company are serving as a mentor. So they are the people with disabilities will be able to receive supported employment. And then this way, acceleration programs is functioning well. And so we have the more than 165 people covered here. So please take a look at this. So especially in the field of digital area, we have digital, the marketing and UI UX. So the UI UX, we believe that this is the growing area. We are seeing the potential for the growth here. They have the disabilities, and then it is important for them to work on the skilling. So they have to get a hold of the skills so that they are able to get employment. So this is the hard skill that we have on the upper part. And also soft skills are also important in terms of communication and also how to connect with other companies. And also one more thing that is written here is the self-management. These are the soft skills so that the persons with disabilities will be able to get employment. Moving on to the next page. So we are not alone. We are trying to collaborate with many companies, including Unilever and also Bloomberg and other companies as well. There are many other companies, Microsoft, AWS, Meta, Google. Many global companies are participating with this program with the sense of partnership. And sometimes they provide the services for themselves, and also sometimes they provide the employment opportunities for the graduates. And sometimes they create programs together with us. So in many ways, they are participating with this project. So this is based on partnership to drive the inclusion of the persons with disabilities. That's what we are working on. Well, we just started, and we are now engaging ourselves to this initiative. Thank you.
Congratulations. I mean, this is an incredibly, it's a pretty progressive program. And what I love is that it's not just your organization, but you are sharing it with other organizations. Can you explain to me, what is your advice on any other organization trying to do something like Tomo Work? And what were the challenges for you in creating this? I mean, Fuji-san, you are an innovator. It's what you do. So what can you share with others on the challenges and how they could do something similar?
Thank you for the question. I think you are talking about the challenges we face with. So I think I talked about this earlier. The most important is sustainability, how to continue working on the same thing. So there could be many things that we have to overcome. When something is done in the framework of philanthropy of the company, there could be a limitation of the budget. Even if they want to expand their scope, sometimes because of the lack of or shortage of money and budget, it cannot go beyond that. Sometimes the company's decision is to just stop doing this. So I think it is important to have a structure with which we are able to continue working on the same goal for a long time. So limitation of money is one thing, and also another thing is resources. It is important to make sure that person is the willingness, person with the intention to help should continue being involved in this. This is Mike of TomoWork, and he wanted to join, he wanted to do this, and so he went to Singapore and started this NPO. This is the experiment. Now he is collaborating with many companies to expand the scope of this initiative. So he has a strong intention, he has a commitment, and in what way are we able to drive this kind of initiative or the commitment of these people? He's a very renowned, the very strong individual. He's a very talented. So the company would want to use him for other purposes, but it is important to drive him to continue doing the same thing for many, many years. So he's in this room, so we'd like you to talk to him. So Mike could come back to Japan, and then we could ask him to do other things, and then he would say, well, no, because I am asked by many people to do certain things. So that would be great. See?
Obviously, I can't see you. So where are you, lovely Mike? Mike, would you like to say a few words? Come on, come up and talk to us. As I told you, we're going to be informal. No, please tell us, explain your experience and about TomoWork and where you want to see it going.
Sure. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike. I'm Japanese, actually. If I describe myself, I'm Japanese with black hair and wearing glasses and wearing a blue jacket and gray trousers. And actually, I started this initiative 3 years ago in Singapore, and there are many challenges, starting the initiative and convince the management team. But the good thing is that, Sumitomo Life management team is very, very supportive. And it's fortunate to have partners in Singapore. They are very passionate, including corporate partners and, volunteers. So I don't feel alone. The job is very tough, but I don't feel alone. And as Sasagawa-san shared with us, that fundraising is my top priority. So maybe tomorrow I get up at 5 a.m. and have a stretch and get to the office by 6:40, and I will write the letters, hundreds of letters to donors. But anyway, I really enjoy and pursue my purpose together with many corporate partners, volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Actually, can we just...
マイクさんありがとうございました。で本当にこんな形で実際にビジュアルを出していただいて、私もそれ
that, but I forgot. I also just want to say a huge thank you because people never know what people need. Kimmy, thank you for giving me the iPad because obviously I can't read the screen. I really appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much. We're going to come back to this issue of restricted budget, Fuji-san, and how we are sustainable because it's the one thing that most of us who are in this world, how do we sustain our funding so that we can scale our work? So we will come back to that. Now, Lilibet-san, love to hear what you are doing in your organization and some of the things that you're learning and some of the challenges that you're facing.
We prepared a short presentation for you. So next slide, please. Okay. So the picture you see on the screen, it's the symbol of a Filipino core value called bayanihan. Helping each other, working together to achieve a common purpose. And that's the essence of collaboration. And that's the DNA of Unilever Foundation. Next slide, please. Okay. We're not as big as Unilever or BRAC and Nippon Foundation, but let me share with you how we are transforming the way we do, in our philanthropic work. And the one you're seeing on the screen is our journey for a strategic framework. We start with research, because as you know, everything has to be backed up with data. We work with institutes, to do our data analytics for us, and to identify the gaps, and that will guide us also in developing the evidence-based interventions. Secondly, as we address the gaps, as we find out, data that will support the relevant interventions or the social innovations, we make sure that it is focused on systemic change. Okay. And how do we go about it? We identify the problems with our partners, with our stakeholders. We co-create the solutions and the programs with them. Before we scale up, we pilot it to establish a proof of concept. And then, of course, the MEL, the monitoring, evaluation, learning framework is embedded in our program design. And using the design thinking approach, we redesign, we tweak it as needed. Okay. And I know we've been talking about sustainability. How do we scale up our work and how do we sustain it? We have 4 strategies. First, our BRAC has been very strong about policy advocacy. So we have created this year our own policy research and advocacy unit within the foundation. We work with experts. If we'd like to influence the mental health policy, we engage, like right now, I have the former Undersecretary of Department of Health as our technical advisor for our mental health initiatives. Okay. Knowledge products. We develop program modules, like for mental health later on, or in the business parlance, we do a lot of product development, and until we establish a menu of offerings that we can share with the public, with my colleagues in the development sector, and also with other corporate foundations, and donors. And thirdly, I think it was missing the slide. As I mentioned earlier, alliances. That's how we scale up our work. We mobilize industry, government, academia to work with us. Again, but presenting those projects which we have piloted and we have established proof of concept, so that we're able also to attract funding. Okay. And lastly, we call it a spin-off. I know my colleague here also has spun off a program. When we say spin-off, it is establishing different NGOs, programs that have matured in the foundation, that we need to bring it outside the foundation for them to be able to attract funding. As you know, when you say pharmaceutical, it's so hard to work with WHO, yes. Even though they're convinced that we have already the modules, like we have a prevention, we have a race against suicide toolkit. And WHO would like to develop one. And we offer their own toolkit so they don't have to start from scratch. But again, because we're a pharmaceutical company, so we have to course it. It's being creative, coursing it to our independent programs for them to be able to attract funding. If Fuji-san has Mike, in the audience, I also brought my, I don't see her.
Doesn't matter, I don't see her either.
Okay, I also brought my director for partnerships. Yeah. Can you stand, Anne? Maybe you can describe yourself as well.
We are making this very democratic, this conversation. Yes. I love it. You'll all get a chance to speak at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. I think we have really good leaders here sharing the advocacy that we do. And I'm Anne Racoma, so I lead the partnerships of Unilab Foundation Philippines, and hopefully we can share with you the things that we are doing that might work also for your organization. And I noticed that a lot of the attendees here are really concerned about sustainability and fundraising. And let me just share with you a very simple mantra that we have. Fundraising is equals to friend raising. And I remember Dr. Hossain saying that it's all about trust, right? So I think if we can look at it that way, show your true self, your genuine intention, that motive, and people will naturally want to help you because they know that you're sincere in your advocacy, and money will come. as they have been saying, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's it, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you later if you have time. Thank you.
Thank you.
She'll go after you after this event to share the programs that we do. Next slide, please. Okay, so on the screen, you will see our program pillars. No? But I think these programs address social issues that are cross-cutting, to our neighboring countries in Asia. So we start with education, but we are focusing on STEM education. Why STEM? Science, technology, engineering, math. We firmly believe that it is the driver of innovation, and the future of work is anchored on STEM skills. Health, as I've mentioned, because of the pandemic, mental health was put at the forefront. So we focus on developing modules, on mental health, promoting well-being, and also addressing mental health issues. And third, this is where our persons with disabilities, the work that we do with them fall under. It's opportunity, giving opportunity to everyone, regardless, again, of their ability or income or gender or race. So under opportunity, we have two actually big initiatives that we launched also this year. First is partnering with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which they're calling it the Global Opportunity Initiative. It's not a rocket, science. It's simply building a community where businesses can share their challenges and share solutions. The second one is advanced manufacturing. We are the convener of a Global Development Alliance in advanced manufacturing under the funding of USAID. It is more of reskilling, upskilling the workforce to respond to all these fast, changing, evolving technologies. And of course, central to our work is the Project Inclusion Network, which is promoting employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. Next slide, please. So for STEM, again, like my colleague here, we are also adopting a holistic approach. So we have programs nurturing the STEM ecosystem. From kindergarten to 3, we have science literacy. In the Philippines, there's no science for kindergarten up to grade 3. So we're trying to influence our Department of Education to adopt some of our science literacy initiatives. For basic education, grades 1 to 6, we develop modules for some of our corporate partners. Recently, we have Dow Chemicals who asked us to develop a plastic sustainability curriculum. For secondary education, and again, talking about inclusivity, during COVID, how can you teach science without access to a laboratory? So we developed a STEM lab in a box, and this year we enhance it to say it's a STEM in a backpack. So senior high school, in STEM we have A. We included A to stand for arts and agriculture. And again, inclusivity, we made sure that no one is left behind. That's why we also have initiatives for our out-of-school youth, which we're calling it alternative learning system, but focusing on technical, vocational education, but mind you, it's STEMified, just to make sure that they can have higher earning opportunities. And lastly is the workforce development, ensuring the pipeline that, again, they respond to Industry 4.0 or in the future 5.0. Next slide, please. Okay, for our mental health, again.
I'm just going to say, Lilibeth, because I want to make sure everybody comes in, so we have to keep this.
Yes.
I hate doing that. I feel so
I know,
rude.
I know.
Because I know you want to say so much, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance.
Yes. Okay, quickly for our mental health system, as you can see on the slide, from promotion to preventive to specialized intervention. We have a menu of product offerings. Positive education modules, the play-based psychosocial support. For specialized intervention, as I've mentioned, we have the Race Against Suicide, a gatekeeper training toolkit. Next slide, please. Okay. And finally, we have the Access to Work model for our persons with disabilities. We work both with the persons with disability and with the employers, preparing the persons with disability to enter the workplace, preparing the employers, to nurture, to offer a career journey for a person with disability. Next slide, please. And here's a testimonial from one of our, his name is Daki. He is in the autism spectrum. We started engaging him when he was in college, but right now, he's now in his 3rd year with JP Morgan, promoted from an entry-level worker to a manager, and his motivating factor is to inspire other persons with disabilities that they can do it also. And last slide is, and this is the one I mentioned, the MIT Global Opportunity, which we launched a couple of weeks ago. Thank you so much.
You did that very
and
well.
That's all.
I
You
mean, I
told
have to
me
give a
not
round-
to speak so fast. That's why I tried speaking.
You did brilliantly. I'm sorry. We're just trying to make sure. I know we have a lot to say, but thank
Okay.
you, Lilibet-san. That's great. Now, Satoshi-san, I'm coming to you. Just tell us a little bit about the work you do, because it's quite different, and you've been doing a huge amount, and I'm really interested in hearing some of the recommendations that you're going to have. So please talk us through what you've been doing.
Thank
Thank you very much. My name is Sato. I'd like to explain to you what JDF is doing in this arena. JDF was established in 2004 in Japan. And in Japan, there are many organizations of the PWD, and 13 organizations, national organizations, came together to form JFD. And in 2004, they were in the process of the Convention of the Right of PWDs in New York, and the JDF members went to New York to be involved. So we conducted many lobbying activities. So JDF is very much committed to the dissemination of the Convention of the Right of the PWD in Japan. I am representing the organization of the physical disability, and we have many other the disabilities organizations with the different sets of disabilities, such as mental health disabilities and the visual audible disabilities. And so we have been working on the establishment of better legislation and regulations. In 2014, we ratified the Convention of the Right of the PWDs in 2014. And so when the country ratifies this convention, we will have the process of the constructive dialogue. And then after that, the recommendation is provided by the committee. And so that would be the great opportunity to improve the legislation in Japan about the PWDs. So we decided to be proactive in talking to them. So to be more specific, we decided to submit the parallel reports to the United Nations. So first and foremost, we decided to learn from other countries about the creation of the parallel report. So we went to Switzerland to look into the country's initiatives among the PWDs, the organizations. They were lobbying and to the members. And so I asked them to give us some time to teach us how to work on that. So starting 2017, we learned from them, and we came up with 3 parallel reports, and successfully submitted them to the United Nations back in August this year at the headquarters of the United Nations. The first constructive dialogue took place for Japan. And we had sent 70 people from JDF, and including the entire nation, we sent 100 individuals to the Geneva So the Japan, in 2014, Korea sent the largest number of missions, and the number stood at 60. So in Japan, Japan was very much placing emphasis on the constructive dialogue. So that means that many people wanted to observe what took place there, and also to have a lobby activities. JDF is now looking at the kind of issues that are related to the employment of the PWDs. One is the shortage of lack of the support or assistance in the commuting and also in the workplace. So if somebody do not have the ability to move the body, then they are not able to work by themselves. But if we have the assistance, then it is possible for them to work. So we have the personal assistance system in which the people would be able to receive assistance for the very severe handicap. So, for example, if somebody is on the ventilator all the time, they are able to receive 24 hours of assistance. But there are some the restrictions for that. So one thing is that they are not able to use it when they are commuting. So that means that even if they are willing to work, it is impossible for the people with very severe handicap or the disabilities to receive employment. And also another issue is that there could be some kind of the employment which is not covered by the labor law. So for that purpose, they have to pay for the services. And also in many cases, the income level is very low. And the third point is the elimination of the prohibition of discrimination and provision of reasonable accommodation and a monitoring mechanism. So within the workplace, there could be the issues. So we believe that it is important to have the monitoring organization. And also one more thing, we have the Act for Employment Promotion of the persons with disabilities. So the level is 2.3% of the employment level of the PWCs. However, there is the exception rate system. So again, this is also problematic. So we pointed this out. And the fifth point is double counting in special subsidiaries system. I think this is quite unique to Japan for the PWBs with the severe handicaps. Sometimes it is all right to count them as 2 persons rather than 1. And also we call tokurei kogaisha or special subsidiaries. That means that they will establish a company which will only provide the employment for the PWDs. So in terms of employment, it's okay, but still, if you try to think about the true nature of the work, it may be problematic.
Satoshi-san, I actually have 2 questions before we even get on to the recommendations here. First off, you've been hearing what Unilab has done, and do you think that is a really good practice, going beyond this idea of special factories or special facilities? Is this how you want to see the progress, or from the work that Fuji-san has spoken about, is this where we're aiming for, a more integrated approach?
Hi.
Thank you. There could be many ways to tackle this issue, but what we try to do is to make sure that there is no distinction between persons with disability and without disabilities. So we should live in the same space, education-wise, and also workplace-wise, and also living communities-wise. So institutionalization is not the answer. We have to live in the community. That's how we are working on it. So the direction is that the persons with disabilities would be able to work alongside with the persons without disabilities in the same workplace.
The biggest issue around disability inclusion is integration. It is integrating us into normal life and removing the barriers that exist within our transportation systems, within our business systems, within our leisure systems, so that we can equally access what we need to access. Now, before I go on to Yosuke-san, is there any of the top recommendations when you did this audit that you would see or any advice to anybody living with a disability that you see that they could, if they're working in an organization, to start looking at integrating people with disabilities into society?
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Should I answer your question first before I start the presentation?
Satoshi-san, but we'll come back to him. Yosuke-san, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
あ、すいません、失礼しました。
Apologies for that. So I would like to start off with my presentation of some of the projects we have related to persons with disability and the Nippon Foundation. So today's topic is about collaboration between philanthropy and business. So I have two cases, concrete examples I'd like to share with you. So I have the conclusion here right from the beginning. These are the two examples of collaboration versus a collaboration with the valuable 500. That is definitely one of the prime example. And also the ideas for the future, personally this is in my mind, is to develop a new funding method, for instance, impact investment. This is the idea that I have in mind, so I'd like to give you more details about each one of those. So the Nippon Foundation, up until now, as part of our projects related to people with disabilities, so especially focusing on Southeast Asia. So we have been conducting various projects, and majority has been focused on the human resource development. So from a small age, through sign language, they can receive education. That is one example. So those have been some of the initiatives that we have been taking. However, if you move on to the next slide, so now we have the nonprofit organization and working with the international organization by working with these entities. So these people with disabilities with high level of education, still, they are not able to be employed. They cannot have a job. So that is why we saw the need to work together with business. If we disregard the business, we cannot move any further. And that is why we met Caroline and we decided to work together with her institution. So that has been the background to our initiative. Another point, we have the spectrum of capital here. So this shows some of the methodology for funding, and it is shown in this spectrum. So on the left-hand side is impact-only type of funding, and on the right-hand side, it is really focusing on the financial return only. So up until now, we only had these two extremes, but now we have this gradation in between those. So conventionally, we have been focusing on the left-hand side only. But in this middle area, we are now trying to explore what can we do in this area. And we may have a new vision of the relationship between philanthropy and business. So one example, let's just say if there's an idea, a concept for technology. So until it becomes a definite industry, we have to go through different barriers. So if it is further away from the market, so let's just say if the R&D is conducted at a university, it is based on subsidy, but it has to be invested and finally go to the market as a whole. But so I think this graph really matches with the spectrum of capital. So it gives us food for thought as to how we can develop a new type of a relationship between philanthropy and business. So this is my input into the discussion. That's all from me.
For you, we'll have plenty of questions. Can I just ask, with social impact investing you were speaking about, this is quite a new idea. Certainly when I began the Valuable 500 and we looked at the idea of social impact investing, a lot of philanthropists were like, no, I feel uncomfortable in getting my dollar back, or they didn't want to recycle, they just wanted it to be purely philanthropic. And then all of us out doing this work need to have sustained capital. What do you think is the challenge for this model that you're creating? Because it is very challenging to get behind that and to see people really invest in that.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. First of all, to gain the full understanding of the concept, that's where the first challenge lies. Because whenever we say impact, it's really difficult for people to take ownership of that word. So because there's a person in need, we just want to help. There's this, so from that sort of a feeling, and that is leading to return of your funds. So to understand that these two could coexist, that might be challenging for a lot of people.
And I want to turn to you, Satoshi-san, because one of the things that you've been referring to is that people with disabilities in Japan's business industry are separated, right? Or maybe seen as inspiring. And we want to have an integrated approach. And this also is reflective of what Yosuke is saying is like, but why would I get my money back from a project? What are your thoughts on this? On how we stop this idea of people with disabilities as inspiring and charitable only?
What we do is nothing to do with money. So even if they support us, the money they will not have any monetary returns. So there is no returns, no profit. So what we try to do is to provide the better legislation so that the people with disabilities will be able to live in the community and they are able to have the employment. So whenever we do things, we do not have any returns. So in the first section, the Chairman Sasakawa said something that came home to me. So we place emphasis on the people who give us this donation. We send thank you letters. So the head of the NPO is responsible for gaining money, so funding money, in order to continue working on this. So it means that we need to have the support from many people. So it is important to respect them, thank them, and appreciate them. Now, I'm not able to make money here, so I have many things to learn from many leaders around me. And we aim for something, and clear communication is important. So we try to increase the number of people who emphasize with us. That, I think, is very important.
This issue of money is coming up because you, Fuji-san, were speaking about there can be a tightness. Like you get to a point and then not the money runs out, but you don't have that money to sustain it going forward. Even in business, you know that the project's done and how can you keep it going? Can you explain a little bit about how you are doing that in scaling your projects? Do you do that through how Lilibet-san does, through sort of spinning off ideas so they can attract the funding themselves? How would you best describe how you overcome this issue of restricted capital?
そうですね。今は基本的に
Well, we are very much focused on the donation at this moment. We have connections with many companies and forging partnerships, and then they work on the employee and education. So sometimes people would work in the same place, in the same space with the people with disabilities. And then in what way are they able to do this? Sometimes people are only paying attention to the mandatory rate of employment of the PWDs, but should not be the end of the story. They have to make the best use of and also have the full potential of the PWDs. And then Mike's organization is now providing the support in the area of the training. So the companies would be convinced that they pay money and then they receive services. So it is beneficial. Again, this is not something that we can say this is a major issue, but the business. But still, increasingly, it is becoming larger and larger, and so it will become and it would constitute a business. So at this point, not too many people are convinced to spend money in the area of inclusion of the PWDs, maybe because of the fact that they are only looking at this with the economic returns or monetary returns. But the financial returns are not the only thing. So the human resources are now gaining momentum. So if you are able to to increase the capacity of PWDs, persons with disabilities, and then in that situation, they are able to say that they are making investment into the persons with disabilities. So human capital way of looking at it is important. If we are able to visualize this, then companies would be more willing to spend money for this on top of donations.
Would you like to respond to that? Because I will, if you don't.
はい、佐藤です。今、
Thank you. I was very much impressed with this. So the financial return is not something that they are able to bring about. So what we are doing is something that would not create the returns for the company, but still it brings good. Brings about the good value to the society. Everybody will be able to go into the society, and then they are able to make contribution in their own light. So that's the kind of environment we try to establish. And then I was very happy hearing that. So the people in the companies are now thinking about this in a different light. So maybe they are not able to have the financial returns, but still they are more than ready to pay for this kind of initiative, because this will be a contribution to the society.
もちろん社会にとっても
Certainly, it makes sense for the society, but also this would be a value for the company as well. For example, in the case of the graduate diploma work, they assume the employment in the company. Up until now, the people with disability had the very simple work, but in the case of digital acceleration program, they are able to go into the digital marketing, for example. They have capacity to do this. So that means that there is a value in that. So that means that they are able to participate in something valuable for that. And the graduate of the Tomo Works had made a proposal in the company and in Singapore, and they were adopted as the actual branch of the actual business of the company. So the businesses brought about by the PWD is not a simple work, but now it is shifting to something more valuable in the digital world. So making investment in this area is clearly beneficial for the company. So certainly the society as a whole will be a better world. But still, at the same time, companies would also be convinced.
My perspective on it, just from work with the Valuable 500, firstly, the word disability is a tiny word that is trying to explain so many different experiences of disability. Yours and mine are very different. And to have a generalization how we can be valued and contributed is a very short-sighted response. But I also think that we forget that people with disabilities make up 1.3 billion people. That is 15% of our population globally, with a mother and a father, that's 54% of our global population. And when you look at the spending power of people with disabilities and their families, because we all have to eat and get dressed, and that's 13 trillion. So Lilibet, I'm going to come to you. I know that you run Unilab as a foundation, but there's the value of people with disabilities, right? So if you want to serve this market, you need to have the intelligence in your business, and you're speaking to it through digital, is that to be able to have the intelligence to serve that market for brand. It is good for your brand to be seen to be investing in inclusion, so you can attract and retain talent and be a brand that people are proud to work with. How's that resonating with you, or is that just being too idealistic?
No, I think that's very true. In order to to spread your advocacy, the awareness that a person with disability, might have their own challenges, as we all do, but they also have unique strengths and capability that they can offer to an organization. Like the one I showed a while ago, the picture of Daki, he can be a good ambassador. So, so that's what we do. We build ambassadors to promote our advocacy for persons with disabilities.
Which is so important, because role models, everybody forgets that Elon Musk has Asperger's, just to remember. Richard Branson has dyslexia. We have a lot of disability in places of high leadership, but they do not discuss it, right? Yes. For fear of what people might think. So I'm very aware, I bet you were coming to somewhere around 30 minutes because that's my body tells me. Would anybody like to ask a question from the audience? And if you don't put your hands up really quickly, there is a young voice I would love to hear from, and it was Edel actually, but if Edel isn't going to stand up, I'm going to go find Edel. But is there somebody out there who's raising a hand? For those of you who can see, please, can you see if there's a hand up? Oh, yes, excellent, okay. Would you like to come up here to the stage and we can give a mic up here? We might as well see you. At least I can see you then.
So, Caroline, thank you very much. My name is Sakai Suzuki.
Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you as well. I'm with Social Investment Partners, but also with Hands-On Tokyo, which hosted Lives Tokyo about a year ago, where you presented the value of 500 as well. And based on that, we started what's called Samurai 125. Where we are asking companies to come and join us to really build the inclusiveness and to help each other learn about how to work together with folks. And so we have a series of seminars, and so this is turning into more of an advertisement. But we have Samurai 125, we have a series of seminars. The next one is coming up in December. You can find it on our website on Lives Tokyo. And please join anyone who might be interested in joining and learning more about working together.
Yeah, but hold on, you're not allowed to leave. What does Samurai do? Like, what is it that you're actually doing? Because it'd be helpful to hear.
Sure. Right now, we are inviting people to come become members of this organization so that we can stimulate each other and learn from each other as to how best to work and work together with people with various kinds of disabilities. And so in the seminar series, what we're doing is we're sharing experiences of how we can work together well, and what are the mistakes that we have made, what are the challenges that we have faced, and how we can overcome them. So I think that's one way to get started. It doesn't solve the world, all the problems, but I think it's one way to get started.
No, it's incredibly important. I think for so long we have not discussed this. My question is also, do you invite guests like Satoshi-san to come and talk to you so that you're hearing from the people who are experiencing disability and hearing their advice and their experience?
Yes, exactly, yes. So in each of the sessions, we have people mostly from the HR standpoint, from corporations, to come and talk about how they are working. And we also have people with certain disabilities, different kinds of disabilities, come and talk about their experiences of working, and it's a learning session.
Okay, well, make sure that you're available afterwards for people to come up to. Okay,
Thank
great. Anybody else who would like to ask a question? Is there something? There's something moving down there, I think. Yeah, great.
Thank you very much. So hi, everyone. My name is Tatiana, and I have a question actually for the business owners and philanthropists. So I think when we're talking about disability and also inequality is something that is very interesting for me, because this is something that I've been fighting for, giving equal access to educations to youth from all over the world, especially those with economic hardships and also disability. And during my time working on this project for years, I've always been wondering what are the perspective from business owners and also philanthropists when we're talking about like young generations, because these people are the future of our generations. So what are the concerns? Is the business owners and philanthropists have like special concerns of or how they view this young generations because they're going to be the leaders of the world in the future? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tatiana. Actually, in our closed session earlier on this morning, we spoke about the importance of young people in philanthropy and hearing their voice, and that it was absent, actually, with the exception of Idel, who was at the table, who we asked to speak at the end. But I think this is something that we consistently overlook, because business and philanthropy are changing at such a rate that we need the younger generation in right now to help advise us. But I'm going to ask both Lilibet and Fuji-san to give an opinion on where the voice of the youth or the experience of the youth is helping inform what you do.
I have to be honest, when I took over Unilab Foundation, that was 5 years ago, I had a hard time also convincing, my board to invest on the youth. But lately, they see
But can I just ask why? Why was it hard to convince them?
Because of the there was maybe a misunderstanding that that youth, especially the millennials, is not bankable. That they might not be able to follow through on the work that we give them. But after a year, when I immediately took over the foundation, all I have to do is to have a dinner with my youth, the beneficiaries of our, we call it Ideas Positive. It's a challenge where we invite youth organizations to come up with their ideas, innovative ideas to address a specific problem in the community. So I literally reach out to the alumni, to those who have participated in the program, and seeing how empowered they are, seeing how the projects were able to contribute to the communities, being replicated by our local government units. So that made us really, and actually, until now, it's a core program of the foundation. We call it, first we call it youth empowerment, but now we call it youth forward. But as I mentioned to you about spin-off, we spun off, and we call it now Positive Youth Development Network. They are an independent, nonprofit entity getting funding from UNICEF, and other international organizations to carry on their work.
Yosuke, with the Nippon Foundation, how is youth integrated into your programmatic work, or do you have specifically separate programs around youth?
Well, I think youth is something. Why am I speaking? Is very important. So that's why we've been focusing in education for such a long time. It's something very difficult for the business sector to tackle. Of course, a lot of social entrepreneurs and even large companies do tackle them, and there are always some more gaps and needs. So I really think that philanthropy is one of the big role there. And yes, we have a lot of, that's why we have a lot of educational programs in our portfolio.
Satoshi-san, with the work you've been doing, you've been a leader in this space for some time. Young advocates with disabilities, what is your advice for them to be involved? I mean, if they're beginning their career in advocacy and campaigning?
はい。
I believe persons with disabilities, first, I believe it's very important that they hear the experience from other persons with similar disabilities. Because if you're by yourself, it is hard to tell how far you can go. You don't know where your limits are. You don't know how far you can go. So hear from the experience from other persons with disabilities, and you can be empowered through those experiences. I believe that is really important. So I think one of the first questions raised from the floor was the fact that we need to share our experience. So of course there are some issues and so forth, and by sharing those first, and I believe that is also essential as well. So the person with severe disabilities, whenever they engage, they would actually hear from their seniors or those who have been in the field before them. So this process of empowerment is very essential. And hearing the stories and experience from other persons with disabilities is essential.
Role modeling, I think, is possibly one of the greatest motivators for change when you see somebody that looks like you doing that work. Anybody else for a question? Is there something over there? Yes. Oh, okay. How fast can somebody with a right mic run?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I'd just like to extend my greetings to all the panelists and thank you for the valuable insights within this discussion. I'm Omar, and I'm a student of economics and innovation. So my question goes to Unilab. And it's evident that you have created, or you're creating a positive socioeconomic impact within the Philippines. And I was just wondering on how you've been monitoring, evaluating, and measuring the impact that you're creating And are there any specific variables that you're using to sort of assess that impact? Because I think a lot of things that we discuss are very impact oriented, but I think it'd be great to the audience if you could understand more in terms of numbers, in terms of statistics, how much impact have you created, and like what are some of the variables that you're using to measure that? Yeah, thank you.
You know what? It's easy to show our our metrics in numbers. Number of schools with reach. Number of students that we've inspired to pursue STEM. But we are really trying to, what's important for us to measure is, as you've said, is impact, where we're able to change, to move the needle, Like when we do STEM education, can we say that the 10th grade learner will choose a STEM track when he goes to the when he goes to grade 11? That would require longitudinal study. For our mental health, like when we share our positive education curriculum with the teachers, we ask the teachers, again, the number, how many teachers, adopted our modules, that's easy. But whether the student who enrolled at that positive education curriculum, was his or her well-being improved, and same with our suicide. So that's why we have institutionalized a monitoring, evaluation, learning system within the foundation, using, again, different kind of longitudinal study for impact measurement. But for now, what we can do is sharing stories of the significant change that we've done, how the communities change, for the better.
Fuji-san, would you like to add to that? How do you measure your impact? Because it's not just numbers, to Omar's point, right? The numbers, great, but what does it actually mean to the lives affected, I think? It's a deeper idea of what the impact is. How do you measure your impact?
インパクト効果
About the visualization of impacts or effects, we have to say that we are still in the development phase. We talked about the persons with disability inclusion. We had a large circle, and one of the well-beings was that one. So I think you still remember the chart. We have different services or the initiatives of well-being, and then all in all, we try to increase the well-being. So if we don't visualize that, then we are not able to understand what we have done. And then in the case of the extent of well-being, this is dependent on the people's sense of value, and also there is a temporal impact. So there could be a boost of the well-being for a while, and it drops sharply after a while. So it is very difficult to see the level of well-being. And so visualization of the extent of happiness or well-being is something that is very difficult. We are now trying to take on challenges here. It is very difficult at this moment. So if you have anything in mind, we'd like to ask for your input, all of you.
This is so important that we admit that the things we're trying to do are hard, right? It's really difficult, some of the work we're trying to do to measure that impact. And I think that's what Omar might have been referring to. Unless we can show the impact in multiple millions, people are often denied funding, right? And some of these things are really difficult to prove. And they're, to your point, Fuji-san, they're really hard and they're long-term, and it's the long game. So thank you for being so honest about that, because we're all trying to learn. Anybody else? I did remember something was happening over here. Is there? Yeah. Great, okay. I'm trusting all of you to make sure that we give the mic to the people.
Well, I would like to ask Lilibeth on...
But first, what's your name? What's your name?
Okay.
Lovely to know
My
your
name is Chiketa Nizaki, and I'm been working as an NGO in Japan. And one of my concerns right now when we were establishing our NPO for the migrants are the migrant women and children who are maybe not victims of social injustices here in Japan, but as well as bullying and discrimination. But most importantly are the women who are suffering of mental illness. And this has been ignored really in our society because we are migrants. So that's one concerns I have. I would like to ask Lilibeth maybe later to share with us your module on this mental health thing. So I can share this to my communities and to the migrants here because there are already Number two is, of course, I would like to address the system in Japan is only they're concerned for those who are documented, but for non-documented people, they're literally set aside. So those are only 2 points of mine that maybe these groups of, special groups, concerns for the special people, can we approach to you later on for the special concerns of children as well. Now I am a volunteer in the public school for children who are with a mental disability and as well as physical disability. So I would like to point this to the group only. Thank you.
Lilibeth, would you like to take it a bit now?
Yes, definitely. That's what we're here for, to share our knowledge products. No? Right now, our mental health modules are targeted for the young, for our learners, for the youth. But it might be easy to tweak that, to cater to adult population.
And Yosuke, is there anything that you would want to add? We're all here afterwards, by the way. We're not running away. But Yosuke, is there anything just from your own experience personally that would you suggest or advise? Just around non-documented citizens, or people living here, and how they access some of the work that some of the charities or some of the needs that they have. Is there any recommendations that you might offer?
なるほど、ありがとうございます。そうですね。私たちも少しだけですけど。
Well, we are partially involved with this, especially after the attack of the Ukraine from Russia. We have been paying attention to the Ukrainian the immigrants. So, and also the Japanese people have the roots or the ancestors outside of the country. So we have more awareness. There's reflecting on this. We have been doing certain things. And I have to say that I'm directly involved with the work here within the organization. So it is possible to connect you with these people in our organization.
It's true, because the work the Nippon Foundation have been doing in regard to Ukraine has been, you acted fast and it has been quite sustained. So it would be great for both of you to speak after. Is there another question? I think there might be a few other questions. Great, okay. I think we're coming up to, it's about 10 minutes. Can anybody see on the clock? See, I'm good at this. I can't see, but I'm good at it. Okay.
There are 4 people, so you can just pick a number.
4 people. Okay, so I'm going to go. Whose hand was up the longest? Who's gonna have the competition? I'm going to get to trouble if somebody doesn't. So you get a quick question and a quick fire answer. I'm going to get all 4 in. I'm going to do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for presenting your wonderful initiative, and also Caroline for your very heartwarming facilitation.
Thank you. What's your name now before you answer your
yes, if I was
question?
to describe myself, I have black hair, round face, and small eyes. My name is Aya, and I'm from ASEAN Japan Center. I have a question specific to Fuji-san, if I may, and I'm afraid it's not really a burning question, but do you have any plan? Okay, so my first question is, what was the reason why you chose Singapore for that program led by Mike? And do you have any plan for expanding that beyond Singapore towards ASEAN or anywhere else? Thank you.
Thank you, Aya. So you get quick now.
OK。シンガポールに、
The reason why we chose Singapore is that Mike wanted to do things in Singapore. So this is the single most important reason behind that. In Japan, we have policies for the persons with disabilities, but we are not sure whether the companies are truly willing to exercise to truly use the people's ability of the PWDs. But Singapore is different. So Mike really wanted to have the success in Singapore, and he wanted to expand it to the rest of the Asian countries, and also he wanted to put that back into Japan. So this is the answer to you.
Right. Okay, next up, who is it? Come on, we're going to do it. People with those mics, run fast. This is your exercise for Saturday. Excellent.
Hi, my name is Junko Abe.
Lovely
Can
to
I
meet you.
speak in Japanese?
Of course you can. Of course you can. We're in Japan. Go for it.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask you a question about the employment of the persons with disabilities. I want to create a situation where the PWDs are able to work with the people without the disabilities, and we are providing consultation services to the Japanese companies. In Japan, we have the special subsidiary system, and this is a legal system. So, regardless of the existence of the disabilities, it is very difficult to convince the companies. Especially important is the people with mental illness, mental disabilities. In many cases, they are in the very employment which only provides the very simple tasks. In what way are we able to provide support? Could you tell us a bit about how you are looking at it, and could you give us some advice?
Passionate area, but I will not talk. I'm the moderator, and I'm going to pass it over to Satoshi-san. What would your best advice be?
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. I think I have a request to the companies. We would like you to try employing the PWDs, and then as you experience the many issues, then you will be able to overcome these issues, and then you are able to enhance the people, enhance the situation so that it is possible for the persons with disabilities to work hand in hand with the people without the disabilities. So I think this is the kind of thing that is very much needed in the era of Convention of the Right of the PWDs.
And also, we do wish that you have this concept of human rights within the business. So having these persons with disability have the same human rights as those who do not have the disabilities. That is the kind of workplace we want business to create. So I believe the person who raised the question, Rao, I'm pretty sure you are facing many challenges. And I do appreciate the fact the system is not there right now. But let's just say in a practical term, if we have concrete examples, that might actually, and that will instigate changes within the system. So thank you. Thank you very much for all of the work that you're doing.
Satoshi-san, but I'm going to just go back to what Satoshi-san said about role models. For a second, persons with a disability, to your point, person first. Why would no company want to employ somebody like Satoshi-san who negotiated the UNCRPD and then did a parallel report? I mean, this is the point, is actually giving people opportunity and chance. Disability is only one part of who we are. So the more chance we give, the more evidence that's proved, and that we are role models for the future. So thank you. Great question. Okay, two more. We got two more.
May I for like 10 seconds?
Oh, you can. Absolutely. Go.
彼女は言うの我慢してると。
So valuable 500. Going forward, you'll be taking 10, 20 initiatives. So we will actually share those initiatives. So hopefully that would inspire you.
Yes, we will have lots of initiatives. I just didn't want to boast about what we were doing. Okay, two more questions. They were over here. I think there's a lot going on this side of the room. Oh, is it there? Is it here? Okay.
熊本コネクションプロジェクト陣森です。
Jim Mori for our Kumamoto Connection Project. Thank you very much for the presentation. So I would like to pose a question from the upstream, quote unquote. So of course, you would need to, there's a lot of pressure from the upstream, but so it's hard to really collaborate with someone in the upstream or large companies. So are you facing any, or do you have any consideration when you consider or not consider a relationship with large corporates or large parties? So what are some of the things that you have in mind as you try to build relationship with the stakeholders?
So I was just listening to the end of the translation. This question of upstream access, how do we get there? It's really hard. It's really hard. So I want to refer to something that your colleague Lilibeth was speaking to instead of fundraising, friend-raising. And actually, this sounds very silly, but it's absolutely powerful. You know, when I think about where we began, I was nothing. I am still nothing. But to get to 500 of the biggest companies in the world and the 500 CEOs, it was a lot of coffee and a lot of networks and a lot of talking and then asking for the introduction to their friends. But what you cannot do is lose faith in it and say it's too hard. You've just got to do a lot of talking, a lot of kissing frogs, and a lot of knocking down doors. But it is really hard. That's just from my own perspective. It's a very personal response. So sometimes it feels it is too big, but it isn't. Just keep going. Is there anybody else that wants to add? What would you do to get up to upstream to you, Lilibeth?
No, I agree with you, Caroline. It's all about trust and relationships. And that's also, that's what we anchor on, you know, when we ask for partners to work with us and also to drive change.
Yeah, and use your own, please never underestimate the power of your heart and your own story. You don't have to be perfect in any of this, but appealing with integrity from your heart and telling your own story to Satoshi-san's point, don't underestimate that. Okay, we have one last question, I think, is it? Help? Is it here? Oh, you're all, this is ridiculous. Okay, I think there's two more questions, is there? Okay.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm Momoko Tamamura from Rwanda Embassy. So, Fuji-san にご質問したいんですけども。
I have a question to Fuji-san. So companies with financial strengths, they can provide assistance to persons with disabilities and also with women. So they do have the capability. But what about business who do not have that financial strengths? Their hands are all tied up trying to generate profit. So for those business, how can they engage in sustainability? How they can engage in employment of the persons with disabilities? What can they do? That is my question. I think this is related to the previous question. So Tomo Works approach is really, so the person with disabilities and person without disabilities, really it is a mission to have all those people working together. So under COVID-19, that environment has been promoted because now we can do remote working. We can conduct meetings through Zoom. Also, even have hearing disability, we can have this the subscription. You can have all the text on the screen. So with digital technology, you can really work together. So maybe perhaps not in the same physical space, but in the same sort of a working space. We can all work together because of technology. Now we are facing shortage of labor. And so I believe there will be momentum that business will try to really leverage on the different capability of people. So we believe this is an opportunity. That's how we see it. Thank you very much for that.
I think we're coming to the end, but before we go, I'm sorry if there's anybody who had another question, but we have our fabulous 4 people here before we, we're going to be here. But you're not all allowed to leave the stage because you can hear there's a lot of people who need your advice, whether it's change making or funding an organization or scaling. So I'm going to ask each of you, if I know we didn't prepare this, so I know you can be annoyed with me. But if you could only write a tweet, what would be your one piece of advice to anybody trying to make change happen? And Lilybeth, over to you. It's a tweet now, so it's short. What's your piece of advice?
Collaborate.
Love that. Okay, one word. Fuji-san.
個人の思い、will です。
The will of the individual will, personal will. Challenge, challenge, just do it, challenge.
I would tweet, email us.
Oh my God! So we have? Can we give a round of applause to Lilybeth, to Fuji-san, to Satoshi-san, to Yosuke, because it's about collaborating, will and intention, challenge, and email. A huge thank you to everybody, and thank you for all your questions. And we're here for later. So thank you very much.
どうもありがとうございました。ご登壇いただきまして。
Thank you very much for all of you. With this, we'd like to close Asia Philanthropy Congress 2022. For those of you who registered yourselves for this presentation, we'd like to send you the questionnaires. We'd like to ask for your candid opinions and feedback. Thank you again for your participation.